Welcome to this special edition of Your Week with St. Luke's. This is Pastor Jenn, and I am so excited because today we are creating these special podcasts around our musical Sound of Music, our summer musical. And for those of you who know theater at St. Luke's, we always choose a theme that has to do with something that's going on in our community. And this year, we are so excited to partner with the Central Florida Pledge. And this podcast is talking to special guests who are leaders in this incredible movement that's happening in Central Florida. So I'm so glad that we are joined by Dr. Joel Hunter. He is a longtime resident, a servant leader here in Central Florida. He has been a pastor at one of our largest churches. He is now pastor of Community Benefit at Action Church, which I think is the best title I've ever heard for a pastor. Community Benefit, I love that, which is a multi-site congregation based in Winter Park. You know, Dr. Joel has been advocate for the most vulnerable populations in our community for decades. He was chairman of Central Florida's Commission on Homelessness. He has always been one to gather voices who don't always disagree or don't always agree with one another to come together to be the best we can for our neighbors. And he has also served as spiritual advisor to many presidents. He is also chairman of the Central Florida Pledge Against Hate. Welcome, Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Always good to be with you, Jen. I really admire your leadership.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here. And we're also joined by Dr. Lua Hancock. Dr. Lua Hancock has spent more than 25 years working to provide needed services and support for college students at various Florida universities, including serving as Vice President of Campus Life and Student Success at Stetson University, which is one of our favorites here in the area. Dr. Hancock also now owns her own consulting and coaching company, aligned with her passion to build healthy and safe communities. She's working as a member of the team that has launched this Central Florida Pledge, and she serves as Diversity and Inclusion Committee of Florida Executive Women and is engaged with the Baha'is of Orlando. Welcome, Dr. Hancock.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's awesome to be here.
I'm so glad to sit down and talk with the both of you to talk about the Central Florida Pledge. It has been a beautiful thing that I have gotten to watch kind of as you have gathered leaders together, and it's been remarkable. But first, could you just tell us what it is and how it got started?
Well, let me jump in. It got started because the horrible events of October 7th, the attack on Israel, and then the catastrophe of the counterattack that has gone on to this day, caused had a ripple effect in Central Florida. There was a radical rise in anti-Semitism, in incidents of Islamophobia. And I was approached by Allen Ginsberg, a longtime philanthropist in Central Florida, a Jewish man, who said, I see little statements popping up here and there, but could we help organize a regional response for our entire region of Central Florida, in order to make sure that war doesn't metastasize over here? And I said, absolutely. And so we called together the recognized leadership in every sector of our community. It wasn't a religious thing, just a religious thing. It wasn't just a nonprofit. It was business. It was government. It was law enforcement. It was education. It was arts and entertainment. And we were shocked at the response, the immediate response of people who said, yeah, we want to build a community here that is safe for everyone, a community where everybody feels like they belong, a community that is against all forms of bias and prejudice, especially those that are acted out against particular groups because of who they are. And so that's how we came about.
Lua, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think I was really impressed. I've done some work also, as has Joel, with Allen Ginsberg before. I'm really impressed by his work to try to work against bias and bigotry in our community. So I've worked with him on some youth efforts. So when they called and said that this effort was happening, and they especially wanted youth voice engaged in how we build communities that are healthy and safe for everyone around us, it hit me immediately, because working with youth, what I find is, and with people in general, but especially with youth, many of them believe in the strength of our diverse community. They want to be a positive change. They see the disintegration of the world around them. And where do they put their energy towards the integration? How do I not just say, oh, okay, I disagree with what's happening around me, but where do I put my positive energy? And that can be hard to find sometimes in today's world. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of, uncertainty about if an effort is really worth your time. You don't want to just go on social media only and just say, hey, I disagree with it. Like, what do I do? So I love efforts where we're giving people genuine education and information, and then places where they can be part of the change that I believe the vast majority of us want to see in our local community.
So one of the things I was most impressed with is something that you all have both touched on, is the fact that this pledge came about by just a broad spectrum of people who not only signed on, but first gave input. I was there at one of the first meetings. There was probably 50 to 80 of us. And then the next meeting had probably close to 100 more. And they represented absolutely every sector of Central Florida. And you all listened. What was that like, shaping, what the pledge started with is not necessarily what we ended with, but it was because of the beautiful work. How did that work, Joel, to listen to all the voices?
Well, we wanted to come out that with a statement not for the community, but from the community. And so to gather those voices in a room and say, how would you put what we're trying to accomplish to build a community that is respectful, that is positive? And so we got this, we started off with people just writing down. I mean, everybody wrote down what they would include in that pledge, so that we knew this wasn't the idea of a committee. This was really the voice of the entire community, from every sector. And as you said, we had everybody in that room that was political. We had 4 out of the 5 presidents of the universities in Central Florida. We had the sheriffs, we had the mayors, we had, I mean, just everybody was in those rooms, top business people, arts and entertainment folk. I mean, just everybody. And so we knew that when we came back with a synthesized statement that had been cobbled together by 2 meetings of leadership, that and then we passed it. We said to everybody, is this where we should go? And everybody said, yeah, this is where we should go. And they pointed out, make sure that you have buy-in from this group. For example, the Palestinian students and residents, as well as the Jewish folk, the vulnerable groups that were likely to be attacked. And then we had the launch at Dr. Phillips, which had its own brass band. When Allen Ginsberg does something, he really does it right. He used to be a promoter of in the rock and roll days, and so but it was so much fun to see both the mayors up there signing a statement on behalf of the community, but surrounded with students and other leaders of the community. And so that's kind of how we got started.
I will say, I thought when the students came in the room, there was even a sense of authenticity, of let's be real about this and let's really put in words or take out words, so that this pledge really has meat in terms of it. Lua, how do we allow ourselves to listen to the students more? I know that's a strange question, but I think there's so much power in what the students are doing here. Talk to us about how this pledge has caught on with the students in Central Florida, first of all.
Right. I think, as was shared by Joel, because they felt a part of the writing of it, it felt authentic to them. Doing that work sometimes can be harder than just writing something for people, but it's better, right? When they say, okay, this is from our community, we believe in it. This is hard work. Where do we get started? How do we get started? I think that the students, our campuses are a microcosm of what's in the world. I think our campuses are sometimes the most diverse places that people will ever live in their entire lives. I think that one of the things we can do, to your point, to listen to the youth is as adults to adjust our mindset and to realize that they have something to say. I think that often we have minimized or our expectation of this generation or what they can be. And some of those negative stereotypes, I don't think are serving us well as humanity. So what I find when I work with this population every day is that they have a lot to say, but they've also experienced a lot of things in their life. I mean, when you think about, my own child told me once, Mom, when you come to pick me up at school, if they call me on the intercom to come to the front desk, as soon as the intercom comes on, I wonder, is there something dangerous in my school? Like, just think about that, right? This generation has experienced a lot, and they have a lot to say and they have a lot to share. And so I think, first of all, it's just adjusting our mindset, inviting them to the table, listening deeply, knowing that at first they might not be as vocal, but saying, hey, we need your voice here. We need it. And we need to know what you want to do next. This next year on college campuses is going to be hard in the fall. It is. We're going to have the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. How do we use that time to recognize all of the innocent life that has been lost and the impact it's had on our local community? One thing I love about the pledge is the bridge that it creates between these world issues that might seem kind of overwhelming, and what does that mean for me in my community? How could I embrace my own neighbor? How could I learn something different about my own neighbor who might be of a different religious background or ethnic background or experience or political background? And how can I listen to them? And so we're training students to do that, but we're also listening to them in the way that we train ourselves to do that.
I love that because my own son is a college student right now, and he said, Mom, your generation, you had to duck and cover for those, to be afraid of an enemy that was outside. And we were taught to duck and cover from enemies that could be people we know, which is a totally different mindset, different mindset. And you're right. College campuses are the most diverse microcosm that most people ever experience, because we grow up and we move away and we live in our echo chambers of people that are like, whether it's through worship or our neighborhoods or our schools or our workplace. So I think what's interesting about the pledge is it's not just about signing. In fact, I have a sign about, it's not just signing that I will eliminate hate, rhetoric and violence, and I will stand up to it, but I will learn. I will learn about my neighbors. I will learn. So what are the ways in which we can practice the pledge or learn to practice the pledge?
Well, there are several, and I'm going to have to ask Lua to jump in here with everyone that I forget, all of these that I forget. But what we've done, first of all, with the website and now the app, we're coming out with an app, is we have built in resources that can both engage training for your group. We are partnering with the U.S. Attorney, from the Department of Justice, Roger Hamburg, his organization, for the Middle District of Florida. Middle District of Florida takes in 35 counties. It's the second largest in the United States. And they have an United Against Hate training that they do to help people understand what is a hate crime, what is a hate incident, what is free speech, but how do you respond? How do you report? So that we can kind of get a handle on what's happening around us. And they asked us if they could partner because they had this great training, but they had no way to get it to the grassroots. And we've been from the community, we're community based. And so we encompass everything from Rotary clubs to chambers of commerce to, all of these groups. And so that's part of the training that is available. There's also going to be just individual. You go in the website, and there are just little talks. How do you live this out every day? How do you respond to somebody who says this? What's going on inside of you when this is happening? And how do you handle it personally? So the app will not only link us with these training resources, both personally and for our groups, but this is a very important and distinct and unique feature that the Central Florida Pledge offers that no other group has offered in Central Florida, and that is that as people sign on, if they will agree to, hey, keep me up to date. What it does is it creates a network of thousands of people who can be alerted to any instance or any episode of aggression or attack or harassment, so that the whole community can come around that group and they're not alone.
Right.
No other group has been able to do that, but we can organize the entire community to stand up to hate, literally, as these incidents come in, as we hear about these incidents. So, and again, it's community-based. This is not, of course, there are legal matters that only the law enforcement can or should take care of. We don't organize counter demonstrations, but what we do is we make sure that those who are being attacked are supported by their community and they don't feel alone. So those are just some of the aspects of what we're building here.
Yeah, I can
What
add on.
did I forget?
I think, one of the things that one of the youth said that I loved is, by signing the pledge, I've given myself kind of a personal challenge of who I need to be in my community. I loved that. So there is a personal component to the education. And like Joel shared, there's a lot of information in the app about, what do I do if I'm standing there and one of my friends or someone I'm near makes a joke that I'm not okay with, that sounds like it's attacking a different population. That's a hard thing, regardless of your age, to know how to do. So we give some tips on things like that. Where do I go for good quality information about response? How do I realize when I'm emotional and relax myself so that I am responding and not reacting? What does that look like in my community? Where do I agree to disagree? Where do I agree that there's a bigger issue that we have to work on as a community? So I am going to, figure out how to work with people who are super different than me. And I think that that's really, key. So you start to think about what that would look like for you as an individual. It is going to challenge some people to try to do something different, to talk to someone different or to go to a different place than you might go. So for example, with some of the college students, we will be offering a diverse interfaith tour where they can go into a mosque, they can go into a synagogue. You know how many people in our community have just never done that? They've never been maybe in a faith place or a different cultural place, a cultural festival downtown that's different than their own identity. And what and we're going to have things like where you can have kind of there's a national movement called the Human Library. You can check out a person who's different than you and ask them questions. There's no wrong question. So we have to create these experiential experiences, not just, you can look at something online and teach yourself, but to really meet other people. What would that look like if you could really interact with others, hear their hopes, their fears, their wishes for the future, and realize they're probably pretty close to yours, actually. So I love, one college professor who has passed away at Stetson always said, if you have 10 marbles in your pocket, it's your job to put them out every day, look at everyone else's, and put back in your pocket those of your 10 that make sense, and maybe one of someone else's. But you're going to examine them all the time. You're going to be curious. So I think Central Florida has already had a history of embracing our diversity. And I think this is just the next step in us kind of continuing to put that stake in the ground about who we are.
I love that, because I think there's such beauty in that wisdom of being curious.
Mhm.
I think, like Parker Palmer says, when the stakes get high, turn to wonder, which is, I wonder what's going on in me. Not, I wonder why they are that way, but what's going on in me? Why am I so riled up about this? We are going to be at St. Luke's trying to work with you all to host that United Against Hate, that training and that conversation. So for people who are listening, especially if you come to Sound of Music, that will be offered for our community. And we'll be getting dates about that. As we kind of come to a close right now, thank you so much for being with us and for doing this work. This work is vitally important. In fact, I'd love to know, why do you think this work, first of all, is important right now?
Again, I came into the ministry out of the civil rights movement of the 60s. And there are some aspects of what's going on right now in our country that mirror some of the unrest of the 60s, some of the activism, some of the polarization. But I got to tell you, now it's much more personal and much more divisive among families and friendships. It's not merely political anymore, even though we're going into a very contentious and malicious political season. But the personal default suspicion and animosity in our culture is a great danger to make us a danger to one another. And so I think, and Dr. Jenn, I can't thank you enough for doing Sound of Music. It really does harken back to a day when the other was villainized and demonized and fear took over. But we have that great potential and somewhat that inertia right now going toward that. And so I think intervention of an alternative that's a better alternative. All of us know, all of us want to feel safe. All of us would rather build than destroy. So we just need to create that alternative.
Yeah, I'll just add on. I think it's urgent. I believe that we are spiritual beings. I believe we are connected to each other and to a higher source. And I believe that some of the division that's been created in our world and society is making us sick. I believe that it's making us mentally and spiritually and physically ill. And this is, I think, a healing effort to say, let's reconnect with each other. And I think that our community and us as individuals will feel healthier when that happens, because that's who we inherently are. And so I think giving this opportunity to go back to and recreate our roots, where people need to maybe pause. We focus a lot on production and speed in our culture, and maybe it's time to slow down a minute and say, can I talk to somebody who I maybe haven't talked to before? Can I learn something from art or from my neighbor that I haven't learned before? And it is very timely. What am I going to feel like like you said, it's personal these days, Joel. What am I going to feel like at the Thanksgiving Day table this year? And how do I bring with me some skills, some thoughts, some peace of heart, some understanding to where I don't have to agree with everyone, but I can be clear a little bit on the piece that I am working for, and I can bring, a sense of curiosity and humanity to that conversation. So I am excited about being part of the work. There are times where it will be messy, but you got to move forward. I mean, we just need it individually and collectively.
One of the beauties of Sound of Music that I think it's of course set in a historical time, and this production is going to be rainbow cast. So it's not going to look like it did. It's going to look like today in many different ways in terms of the diversity of our humanity, telling that age-old story. But one of the things that happens is I think Maria is healing Captain Von Trapp of grief. The grief of the loss of his wife, the grief of a loss of what is happening in his country, what he stood for as a military man. And I think when we heal one another, we then have the courage from all kinds of griefs of, this is not the way it was supposed to be. This is not what I was taught. This is not, this is what when we heal each other and heal each other of a lot of our griefs, then we can stand up, I think, and be whole, and stand up and actually stand for love for one another. And I think that's what the Central Florida Pledge is doing. It's in some ways not only preventative so that if hate arrives in different ways, we can stand up for one another, but it's healing us as a community from a lot of the harms that people have had, and knowing that others who are different than me are going to help heal me because they see that I matter. So thank you for doing that in this time. I'm so appreciative of your work and so excited to be able to share the pledge. I will tell people on August 8th, we're going to have Central Florida Pledge Night at Sound of Music. We're going to have a talk back session. And we're going to have, I think, Dr. Joel, you're going to be a part of it. Maybe Lua is going to be a part of that talk back session right afterwards. And we're going to talk about this some more. The Holocaust Center will be here, actually bringing some of the propaganda of the time about othering that happened, just as you talked about. And so we're just so excited. Thank you for your work, your dedication, your passion, your love for Central Florida and all of its residents. And I want you to just leave with one thing. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of rhetoric. There's just a lot of division in the world. Where do you see good?
Oh, wow. I see it all over. The response that we have had of people who really do want to love their neighbor. There's just this moral core in us that knows that if we love our neighbor, not only will they be better, but we'll be better. It's built into us. And so I just see a lot of people with a lot of good intentions, but they need opportunities to express the good that's in them.
I feel really lucky that I get to see this good almost every day in my work in K-12 and higher ed, in our students and on our educators. I mean, our educators are just showing up every day, doing the work in these communities, the work that at times can be hard. And they've been through a lot of change in this past year on their campuses. And I just see them continuing to show up for the mission of education of the next generation. And it's extremely inspiring to see that. I think, when we have fellows who work with the pledge, college and high school students, and they get scholarships, et cetera. But when they applied, we found out that some of them actually didn't even need the academic scholarship because they already had scholarships. And I asked them, tell me more about why you wanted to be a fellow. And they talked about that they want the mentorship, that they want to be a mentor in their community, that they want to be part of this change. One of them switched from a full-time to a part-time job while also being a student so that they could do this work around the pledge. Another person said, I'm going to take one less class because this work is so important to me. So I see it often. I think if we can just give people the opportunities and outlets for the good work, and invite them into spaces, that they jump up every day.
So if they want to know more, if they haven't signed the pledge yet, where do they go?
Go to centralfloridapledge.com, and that will get you there. And soon there'll be an app that you
Awesome.
can download on your phone. It has all these resources. Is that out, Lua? I should know.
It's in testing, but it's going to be out real shortly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So soon there'll be an app, but for right now, just go to centralfloridapledge.com and read it through, and you'll see everything that's available.
All right. And if you want to go to Sound of Music, st.luke's.org/theater. We'd love to have you, but more importantly, we want you to sign the pledge because it's just, I think it's going to make a huge difference in our community. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Lua, for being here. And thank you for everyone for listening.